Hello everybody, it is I, Eternal Flame here, and today I am here to talk about something that I've been wanting to talk about for a long while, but I just haven't had the chance to talk about it until now, mainly because I was extremely busy and there were just other videos that I wanted to make first. But this entire video is basically going to be about Yuji's awakening of Shrine, since we know that Yuji now has access to Shrine, and whether giving Yuji Shrine, like Cleave and Dismantle, was actually a good idea or not, if this has a good narrative, if Yuji should have awakened it earlier, if at all, and basically just all my entire thoughts on Yuji awakening Shrine as a narrative tool. So without further ado, let's get straight into this. Now, one of the main reasons why I'm actually making this video is because I, like a lot of people, held an opinion for a very long while that Yuji shouldn't actually awaken Shrine. Now, the main reason why I and a lot of people held the opinion that Yuji should not awaken Shrine is mainly because Cleave and Dismantle is not a very Yuji-like curse technique. It's why a lot of people thought it'd be possible for Yuji to awaken the Fire Arrow and those types of fire abilities, but not many people thought it was likely that Yuji was going to awaken Cleave and Dismantle, even though Gojo had said so a while back. It wasn't on a lot of people's minds, mainly because slashing relentlessly doesn't really seem like a Yuji type of curse technique to have and doesn't really fit him. Mainly because of the brutality that the slashing actually has and just how merciless it is in comparison to Yuji's relative hand-to-hand style and Yuji's type of personality for wanting to help others. It just really felt like Cleave and Dismantle wouldn't fit Yuji, but now that Yuji has actually awakened Cleave and Dismantle, I want to talk about if this was actually a good thing or not for Yuji to awaken. Now, I still stand by my opinion that Cleave and Dismantle does not fit Yuji at all for the previous reasons that I had just said. It really doesn't feel like a curse technique for Yuji, especially considering Yuji's hand-to-hand style. Blood Manipulation fit a lot more for him, the possibility of Yuji awakening Anti-Gravity fit a lot more for him, and Cleave and Dismantle doesn't really fit for him. However, in my opinion, I don't actually think that's a bad thing that Cleave and Dismantle doesn't fit for him. In fact, I actually think that's intentional on Gege's part, that he gave Yuji a curse technique that doesn't really fit his personality. And the main reason why I believe this is such a fitting technique for Yuji in the current moment, even though it doesn't fit Yuji's personality, is because of what Yuji's mentality is in the current moment. Where Yuji's mentality in the current moment is all about doing anything so long as it means he can take out Sukuna. After all, as Yuji himself said, he will eat anything so long as it means killing Sukuna. Of course, the obvious meaning of Yuji will literally eat anything to kill Sukuna. That's the obvious meaning, but there's also the double meaning to that, which is basically Yuji saying that he will do anything so long as it means killing Sukuna and saving Megumi. Now, the reason I do include saving Megumi in that, even though he doesn't say saving Megumi out loud, is because their entire plan hinges on saving Megumi, and they have kind of been gung-ho focused on saving Megumi up to this point, not just killing Sukuna, but also saving Megumi, so yeah, that's included in that too. Like, especially considering the fact that Yuji literally saw the depressed state that Megumi was in, and he still decided that he wasn't going to give up on Megumi yet, even though he is in this entire mood where he's determined to kill Sukuna no matter what. So yes, he's just as determined to save Megumi as he is to actually kill Sukuna, which is also part of Yuji's indomitable and unbreakable ideal. But all of this to lead back to the point of Yuji awakening Shrine. The reason why I believe this fits so heavily is because Yuji is fully willing to become a monster that he is not. Fully willing to become something that is not innate to him and awaken something just to make sure that he can take out Sukuna. At least on a meta-narrative aspect, he is willing to become a monster that is not like himself. He is willing to take on powers that do not fit who he is as a person to have a chance at taking out Sukuna. Which has also been a relatively huge theme of this entire arc as a whole as well. This theme of what are you willing to sacrifice in order to take out Sukuna. For several people, it's their lives, but for others, it's things even worse, such as Yuta Akotsu having to take on the body of Gojo Satoru, his own mentor, and forcing Gojo to continue the role of the monster, the role of being a weapon for Jitsu society that he had been his entire life that Yuta did not want to give him, or Yuji who had to eat his own brothers, and the lives of his own brothers, and absorb them into himself in order to pull off using blood manipulation in the way he does, just so they can have a better shot at beating Sukuna. And that is what I believe the narrative purpose of Yuji awakening Cleave and Dismantle, awakening Shrine is, where Yuji is becoming more like Sukuna, but he is still holding on to that ideology that he has that separates him from becoming Sukuna. He is the modern era Sukuna, yes, but he's still different from Sukuna as a person. And that's what I believe the other meta-narrative purpose of Yuji awakening Shrine actually is, which is to show how Yuji and Sukuna could have been so similar, but the two of them are different on one aspect and one aspect alone, and that is their ideology. Yuji and Sukuna have a terrifying amount of similarities when you really look at them. They are both extremely determined people that are willing to do anything whatsoever in order for them to get what they want, and both of them have extreme amount of determination that allows them to push through any circumstance that is put in front of them. However, the one key difference between Yuji and Sukuna is Yuji has had people that actually mattered to him. Yuji has had people that have been around in his life in order to teach him the value of love. Yuji has had the value of having people around him to teach him ideals ideals and the power that comes with those ideals and the power that comes with valuing others even though they're weaker than him, in comparison to Sukuna, who doesn't have those values. Sukuna, who thinks only of the strong of being important. If you are not strong, if you're not a monster, you're not important in Sukuna's mind, and you deserve nothing more than to suffer and be weak. So of course, what better way to show that Yuji and Sukuna are the same type of person, that they could have been the same type of person, other than just giving them the same curse technique, however flavoring it different, which is what happened with Yuji. After all, Yuji does not have Shrine in the exact same way that Sukuna does. Yuji has a much more modern era version of Shrine, which he can redefine with a different purpose. Even though Yuji and Sukuna could have been very similar in people, they are different because of their ideologies. Even though they have ideologies on par with each other, they are different because of who they are as people, where one values people and doesn't really care that much about strength, the other only cares about strength and doesn't care about people unless they are strong. And it's almost like both of their shrines represent those two separate aspects, where one represents a desire to help people, while one represents a desire to hurt people. How while the two of them are opposites, but the two of them are also the same side of the same coin. So of course Yuji using Shrine is going to feel unnatural. Yuji is using Sukuna's abilities. While we know Yuji should feel like the opposite of Sukuna, it's really just highlighting how these two are almost the same, other than how they view the world and how they view ideology. It's also why they have these small differences in their curse technique itself, which in my opinion is really good writing on Gege's part. It's why I actually do like that Yuji has awakened Shrine around the time he does. Now yes, I do actually think there is a better time for Yuji to have awakened Shrine, which I'm going to get into later in the video. However, I do think this was a really good move on Gege. I do genuinely like that Yuji has Shrine and that Yuji has access to Shrine. I do like the narrative around it, the narrative that Yuji is going to be forced to become something more like Sukuna in order to have a chance to take down Sukuna, while it just shows more and more how close Yuji and Sukuna actually are in terms of personality. Even though it doesn't feel natural for Yuji, I'm really curious to see how Yuji is going to make the technique his own. After all, there's one important thing that needs to be noted, and I don't see that many people talking about this. Yuji is still freshly awakened to using Shrine. And remember, curse techniques are all about interpretation. Interpretation is by far and away the most important aspect of curse techniques. It's what allowed Megumi to get even stronger than he was in comparison to before, when Megumi before, thanks to his interpretation, wasn't even going to get stronger than Nanami. However, he was able to awaken his domain through altering his interpretation, and Yuji had just freshly awakened the technique when the modern era version has already displayed some differences in comparison to Sukuna's Heian era version of the technique. Which is what I think we're going to get to see more and more the battle continues. We're going to get to see how Yuji's Cleave and Dismantle, how Yuji's Shrine differs from Sukuna's, and how their ideology leads to two different paths for Shrine. Two different paths that both have the same starting point. Similar to how Sukuna and Yuji have the same core of who they are as people, even though their beliefs make them completely wildly different people. And that'll be reflected in the ways that both of them use Cleave and Dismantle, in the ways that Yuji uses the Fire Arrow, because I think Yuji is going to awaken the Fire Arrow. I don't think he's going to actually use it as a Fire Arrow, but I do think he is going to awaken Furnace. So of course there are definitely more fitting curse techniques, blood manipulation being focused around the body and Yuji having always been focused around his own body and soul, so those two go hand in hand. Anti-gravity, which would allow for better mobility and better punches because it's anti-gravity, and gravity manipulation works really well in hand-to-hand combat. Both of those work much better with Yuji than Shrine would. However, Yuji is not supposed to work well with Shrine naturally. Yuji is going to force that change and force Shrine to become his own, and that's why I like it as a narrative tool. That's why I like the fact that Yuji has awakened Shrine. However, now I'm going to move on to the second part of this video, which is me talking about if Yuji awakening Shrine right now was the best move, because I think that that's something else that's entirely different to talk about. And there are a couple of reasons why I question whether Yuji awakening Shrine right now was the best choice or not, which the main reason why is because Yuji has awakened a lot of new powers out of nowhere. For example, Blood Manipulation, Simple Domain, RCT, as well as now Shrine. Now yes, all of these have explanations, and 3 of them were learned over the month time skip, with Yuji not being that good at Blood Manipulation, and Yuji basically needing to cheat with RCT and Simple Domain, which I don't think that these are out of nowhere. However, I can get where the average viewer would think these are out of nowhere because of how fast in succession he gets all of these powers alongside Shrine. So yeah, Yuji does get a lot, which is where a lot of people's problems come with Yuji awakening Shrine, because it's added on to everything that Yuji awakened over the time skip. Now in my opinion, I do not agree with this at all. I think this does actually make a lot of sense that Yuji was able to awaken all of these, on top of the fact that in order for him to awaken Shrine, he needed to land around 2 or 3 black flashes, with it actually coming from that. So yeah, Yuji just didn't get it for free. He did actually need to land black flashes on Sukuna, which he couldn't have done without somebody's help, but at the same time, I do get where this view is coming from, and in my opinion, I do actually think there is a better time for Yuji to awaken Shrine that would have been even more narratively fitting and could have built into this plot even more. And in my opinion, I believe the better time for Yuji to have awakened Shrine would have been in his battle against Mahito back in Shibuya, which might actually be a surprise for some of you guys that I think that is a better time for Yuji to awaken Shrine. So let me explain why that would have been probably one of the best times for Yuji to awaken Shrine. Now, the reason why I believe this would have been the best time is mainly because of what had happened before this fight, which is Sukuna having taken over Yuji's body, and Sukuna using Shrine to wipe out the entirety of Shibuya and putting Yuji through an absolute nightmare of emotions because of the amount of destruction that Sukuna had caused through Yuji's body. Then of course the Mahito versus Yuji fight plays out the same way until Nobara gets taken out, and then Todo arrives into the battlefield as well and gives Yuji the entire pep talk that he needs at that current moment. However, it's after Yuji lands that first Black Flash on Mahito, that is when I'd actually have him awaken Cleave and Dismantle. That is when I'd have him awaken Shrine and land a slash on Mahito through using Shrine. And at that moment, Yuji realizes that he is just Sukuna. Yuji realized that he had awakened Sukuna's curse technique, but I could see something being played into the fight, which is Yuji's refusal to use Shrine. It would have been much more hype if Yuji awakened Shrine in that moment, as well as a way of the world just mocking him by giving him the power of Sukuna in that moment as well, allowing him to become like the thing that had caused so much destruction, and basically the world telling him that he is Sukuna and that this is because his fate is being Sukuna's vessel, because his fate is being Sukuna's prison. And basically I would have the entire fight still play out the exact same until the very end, where Yuji had landed the third Black Flash and had accepted his role as a cog. In order to signify that he had accepted his role as a cog even more, I would have Yuji use Cleave and Dismantle on Mahito to cause critical damage to him. Basically using Cleave and Dismantle to rip apart the true form of Mahito, to rip apart the armor that Mahito had created on himself. As I think that Yuji choosing to use Shrine in that moment really just fits with the entire cog mentality that Yuji had in that current moment. Where of course Yuji despises using the very tool of the one that caused so much destruction, despised using the tool of Sukuna to take down Mahito once and for all, but he didn't care at that current point in time. He didn't care anymore because his role in Jujutsu Society was to be a cog. His role was to eliminate curses, and what did his emotions matter? All that mattered was eliminating curses, so he would use Cleave and Dismantle and every tool that is given to him in order to eliminate curses. It would also go very well with Yuji and Mahito's entire I am you narrative that the two of them have, mainly because of the fact that Mahito had awakened his own true form in his battle against Yuji after landing his own Black Flashes, so I feel it's only fair that Yuji ends up awakening Shrine against Mahito as well in his own Black Flashes in order to get stronger. However, the two of them go down a very different path as a result of them getting these new powers, where Mahito thrills in it. Mahito loves this new power that he had gained access to from being a curse. Yuji tries to reject it at first, similar to how he's trying to reject the fact that him and Mahito are the same, until he eventually accepts it, and then he uses Cleave and Dismantle to finish off Mahito. But I don't actually think that he should kill Mahito either in that moment as well. As much as I wish Yuji did kill Mahito in that moment, as much as I think that would have been good, I genuinely really like that Mahito was taken out by Kenjaku and not Yuji, as it really shows that both Mahito and Yuji were in the wrong for their mentalities. Mahito was in the wrong because he was obsessed with Yuji. He still was ultimately obsessed with Yuji even till his final breath, because Yuji was the one who allowed him to awaken. Meanwhile, Yuji was wrong because he tried to turn himself into a cog, and he tried to become a cog. He tried to ignore who he was as a person. So as punishment for Yuji trying to ignore his own identity, the world basically had Kenjaku take out Mahito instead of Yuji take out Mahito. Now yes, I also know it's because of Kenjaku's plan needing to take out Mahito, but I still think that there is this little narrative aspect of it, that this is the world punishing Yuji for taking on the cog mentality, while also punishing Mahito for his own mentality. I also think it would just be a really cool visual to see, like, the Cleave just tear away Mahito's armor from his true form instead of the way that it was torn away, because it was kind of just destroyed as a result of Yuji landing a Black Flash punch on him, which I still think would happen, but at the same time, just seeing the sight of Yuji landing that Black Flash and then the Cleave tearing away his armor would be a really cool sight to see. It also helps Yuji's arc in the Culling Games even more, mainly because the entire purpose of Yuji versus Higuruma is to get Yuji closer and closer onto the path of accepting that he is not at fault for what Sukuna has caused. Yes, he is still a cog in the system, but he is not at fault for what Sukuna had caused in that arc. He is not the one who killed those people, Sukuna is. And then it could lead into Yuji just fully accepting that these powers are his now and him using them in his own way, that he doesn't have to be Sukuna just because he has access to Sukuna's curse technique. This could even help feed into Yuji's mindset later in of he not being enough to beat Sukuna. Even though Yuji is more experienced with Cleave and Dismantle than he was before, he is still no match for this nerfed output Sukuna in terms of Cleave and Dismantle usage. Sukuna is still that much more masterful than him, so Yuji's going to have to train, surpass his limits, as well as get new abilities just to stand a chance against the new Sukuna that the team is going to fight. I just in general think that it would have been better for the story if Yuji did awaken Cleave and Dismantle against Mahito, and it wouldn't have just been added into the slot of new powers Yuji awakened over the time skip. There was a lot of character potential if Yuji did actually end up awakening Cleave and Dismantle, especially at that point, for Yuji to develop, and we could have seen that development happen, and it would just help with a lot of Yuji's existing development, at least in my opinion. However, that's just my opinion on when I think Yuji should have awakened Shrine, and why I think Yuji awakening Shrine is actually a good thing for the narrative and why it fits so well. I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. Anyways, I'm gonna see y'all later. Have a good day. Peace.